The fall season is here, guys, and so today we're going to take a look at 17 different tender plants that we need to take from outdoors and bring them indoors to protect them from the cold. My name is Marlene. If you've never been here before, welcome everyone. Welcome to my home and garden channel. Now let's take a look. The first one we're going to be looking at would be begonias, and boy, do I love begonias. I cannot tell a year when I have either had some on my patio or in my garden or both. But once the temperature gets below 55 degrees, especially if they're not in larger containers, you will definitely want to bring them indoors. You can get them to come back depending on how mild your cold zone is. And in this video that I did previously, I went over and explained the steps that you can take so they can come back if it's a mild winter that you do get. The ones in smaller containers like these, preparation will not be able to have them survive outdoors because there's no surrounding soil to give them that insulation that the larger ones have, or the ones that are in flower beds. So these will definitely have to be moved in. And of course, you'll want to go in first and make sure that there are no insects on there because we don't want to bring them inside our house. And I do have a bonus point for you at the end regarding these flowers and how to care for them. Next, we move on to number 2, and that would be Coleus. And I just love the jewel tones of these flowers. They also are known as Joseph coat in many areas like Jamaica and areas like that. Once the weather though gets below 50 degrees, they will need to come inside before that happens because we don't want them to get frost damage or damage from a hard freeze. And so what you'll want to do is before you bring them in, is to go ahead and either pinch the flowers off if they have flowers on there, or just the little leaves that are at the top, and then you can bring them indoors. And they make beautiful house plants. So this is one of them that's on the top that people grow outside and inside as well, because they do pretty well in both areas. These are some beautiful ones that my sister had a few years ago. These are some marigolds right here. Of course, these we can always use the seeds to get the plant to live on in that way. Coleus, we want to propagate them too if we can. But to bring them in, guys, you want to get something like a watering wand, which I will link this in the description box for you below. This does a good job of spraying them off, and then you allow them to dry, and then you bring them indoors. And this is a video that I'll link at the end or in the description box for you that goes over all those details. Moving on to number 3, and that would be caladiums. They have beautiful showy leaves, and I absolutely love them. I planted them a couple of times. They appear so well like begonias that you're seeing there and creeping Jenny, depending on what you want to arrange for them. Many times we'll buy them as, we'll buy the bulbs or tubers as they are called, and we'll plant them that way or maybe from start. But either way, once we get to the end of the growing season, this is what they start to look like. They get droopy, they have yellowing leaves. But the good thing about these is that we can get them to come back, but what we have to do is to get the tubers because, the tubers are the storage roots that are there. So you'll want to go in and ease them out. We're going to cut them off, but not just yet. You'll want them to dry out first, maybe like on like paper I have there, maybe for a few days or so. And then you're going to go in and just snip them off from the leaves that are there. So you can see how those are looking, and I'm just going to go in and take them off individually, and then we'll need to store them correctly. What I do though first is I will go in and I'll spray them with a solution of hydrogen peroxide, just a light misting to prevent any like fungus, mold type invasions from taking place on these plants, and then let them dry a little bit more, and then I'll go ahead and put them in a cardboard box. When you put them in a cardboard box, you have different options that you can use to cover them. Some people just use shredded newspaper, and that's sufficient for them, but you have the option to put them in coconut coir, or you can use peat moss if you're okay with peat moss. And I'll link these in the description box below. And of course, these are just, ideas for you guys. Read the reviews that are on there, and then you can make your decisions to suit yourself the best way. Next, we move on to number 4. That would be elephant ears. And as the name says, elephant ears, that's exactly what they look like. They're so gorgeous. And in a similar way for these, you'll want to go in and get the storage roots. They're called corms in this case, and you can see how large they can get. So we can't imagine trying to bring something as this large inside unless you have a really massive greenhouse or, a protected sunroom or something like that. And don't they appear so well in the red begonias right there? So gorgeous. I just absolutely love how they look. But yes, guys, you'll want to treat them in the same way that you would treat your caladiums. Just take them up, let them dry out, and then you go ahead and store them once they have gotten to that. Moving on to the next one, that would be number 5, and that would be geraniums. And I absolutely love geraniums. They're so beautiful. They smell really nice. And there are lots of pests that actually don't like them. So in many cases, they're pretty disease resistant. They're colors of red, they're colors of pink, and they also have white as well. So lots of options for you. So you do have the option to bring them in the container that they're in. Typically, they say these are in the spring, so they have lots of buds coming up, but usually by the end of the growing season, not so many. So you can take off maybe about a third of the plant if you like, just prune off about a third of the plant and just bring it inside. And these, though, they like sun, and these are some ones that were in a hanging basket right here. And because they do have that requirement, you will want to go and try to see if you can find a south-facing window for them, so they're going to get lots of sunlight coming in. They're such a wonderful plant. What some people do is they also, just pull them out from the pull them out, shake off the soil, allow them to dry out for a couple of days, and then they store them in a cool basement in a paper bag with newspaper. So I've never done that before, but I know it has been done. You can do some research to see if that option might work for you. Moving on to the next one, that would be Persian shield. Look at those leaves, guys, how gorgeous they are. When it gets below 55 degrees Fahrenheit, these will also need to be protected. They combine so well with so many different flower types, in flower beds and in containers. They like bright indirect light. So, when you're placing them indoors, you don't have to be by like a south facing window. If you have a grow light, that works really well for them. And the good thing about them is like Coleus that we looked at earlier, they're very easy to propagate. You just pull out the leaves that are at the bottom, make sure there are no leaves going in the water, and you can propagate them that way. So that's a wonderful thing. Now, you're probably thinking, is everything going to come inside? But there are colder plants that can take the cold, like the kale and the pansies you're seeing right there a few years ago in my garden. And in this recent video, I showed you a step-by-step on how to plant them, and that will be linked at the end of this video. So be sure to check it out if you didn't do so already. Moving on to the next one, and that would be tropical hibiscus. Aren't they gorgeous? It's just a wonderful thing that we can get this tropical look on our patio or in our gardens during the growing season. But of course, they're not going to be able to survive the cold weather, so they will need to be brought indoors as well. And if you can get a south-facing window, that would be best because, again, these are very tropical and they like to have lots of sun. Now, there are some hibiscus that are the hardy types, like these ones right here. You can see how they look, that the leaves and the petals, are kind of more interlocking. They look more like a flattened look, and also the leaves are shaped a little bit differently. And if you compare them with the hibiscus, the tropical ones, you can see that the leaves on these ones, they have more of an oval shape, that they're a lot more glossy, and the petals are a little bit more separated from each other. So there's a way to kind of distinguish one from the other. Plus the label should tell you, hopefully, which kind it is that you have. And I just wanted to take a moment to invite you to subscribe to my channel if you have never done so before. I do lots of gardening topics, tips, and tours, and we have a wonderful community of gardeners here. So come along and join us. And guys, I just want to thank you for the various ways that you support my channel, whether it's by full watching the videos, sharing them with others that love gardening, whether it's by purchasing seasonal merchandise or your channel membership. That truly means a lot and puts such a great input in what we do on this channel. I hope it has been very helpful to you, and I certainly appreciate you, and thanks for all that you do in advance. So moving on to the next one that's numbered 9, and that would be crotons. And this is one a year after I had bought it. You can see there's lots of new growth that came up on there, and I was about to repot it. But you can bring them indoors to enjoy that beautiful look. This was maybe about 3 years after how large it got. I brought it in with a chrysanthemum one fall. The lighting's a little bit off because it's a lot more colorful than that, but it's such a wonderful plant and they do so well indoors. Truth to be told, guys, I brought this in 2 years ago and I did not take it back outside because I think it actually preferred being indoors than outdoors by my grow light. What I will say too is though they're very tropical, but they actually don't like sun all the time. The best spot for these is actually a hard sun area if you can find it on your patio or maybe in your garden, because I have seen where they can get sunburn, especially if you're transferring them over from winter indoors to spring outdoors. When the sun beams in on them, the leaves can actually get burned. So, choose your spots very wisely as you put them in and out, depending on what you decide to do. But I said that, I kept mine indoors and they were perfectly fine. Grow lights are a great option for these, and I'll link maybe 1 or 2 in the description box for you so you can have some choices that you can have them be their best, and the other plants as well inside. Number 10, that would be Canna lilies. So very tropical and such beautiful colors. I absolutely love them. And they come in different colors, and some of them are larger varieties than others. But again, these plants, because they're pretty decent size, you typically want to save the roots. In this case, they're called rhizomes instead of the plant itself. And you'll want to take those out and similarly treat them like we did for the elephant ears and the caladiums and so on. You want to take them out, get them cleaned up from the soil, allow them to dry out a little bit, take the foliage off, and then go ahead and bring them indoors in a cardboard box. Number 11 would be Boston fern, and this one is actually called fluffy ruffy fern, ruffle fern. And you can see why, because they look like a little ruffle and they're so gorgeous. I love them. Now, there are some ferns like these. These are lady fern. These are actually volunteer ferns that grew around my yard at the back, and I think they're so pretty. These can actually withstand the cold. So if you have this type of fern, then there is no need to bring them in because they're just going to dry down and then they will come back up in the spring for you every year. But if you do have Boston fern varieties like this or the one here, any one of them, guys, when you bring them in, you can always go ahead and put some river pebbles in the bottom of little sauce that you're putting them in, or a tray or whatever. And that actually helps to retain some moisture down there because it does get dry sometimes during the winter. You can mist them to maybe once or twice per week. Moving on to number 12, and that would be citrus. Once the weather gets below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, they don't like it anymore. They need to be brought indoors. And by the way, guys, these are actually the overnight temperatures that we're talking about, not the high temperatures for the day. So be sure to take a look and see how they vary. But these will need to come in. If you are able to get a greenhouse, more power to you. I will link at least one of these in the description box below if you wanted to get a greenhouse, to take care of them that way. Of course, if you don't have that, then the option would be to put them indoors in a south-facing window because they do like lots of sunlight. So they need that south-facing window, or if you have grow lights, you can put them over them, and that's going to help them out a whole lot. They will thank you for it and reward you with wonderful fruits. Number 13, and that would be aloe. And the aloes you're seeing back here, they're mixing with some other type of succulents right here. They have great medicinal purposes, but they also, even though they're desert plants and deserts get cold at night, they don't like that, when it gets too cold for them, like 50 and below. So you don't want to bring them in. And this is kind of what it looks like when they're frostbitten right here. If that happens, you can just get a clean pair of scissors, go in and take off, most of the damaged parts, and then allow it to callus over, kind of like it seals itself off for maybe about 4 or 5 days. And then you can water them and just give them a chance, see what happens. They like, indirect light, as long as they have some light coming in, then they'll bounce back really, really well for you. Over here we have tender succulents, and aren't these gorgeous, guys? You wouldn't want to hurt these little succulents, would we? They're so beautiful. And again, even though they're desert type plants, and deserts, it gets cold at night, they don't like it too cold. These varieties right here, so you'll want to bring those indoors as well and treat them in a similar way like you would for your aloe. Moving on to the next one, guys, and that would be your snake plant or sansevieria. And these are some dwarf varieties right here. And of course, they come in many different sizes and shapes in some cases. And you can see they're paired there with some other succulent types. And so if there's any damage on these, you'll also want to trim them off with a clean pair of pruners and, bring them indoors. And you want to make sure that your soil dries out before you go in and water them, between waterings for all of these cactus type plants because they get root rot very easily. We've gone to the next one, and that would be orchids. That's number 16. And aren't these gorgeous? I just love them. Orchids are epiphytes, which means that they grow on other plants or, decaying wood and things like that for support, but they actually produce their own food. And this is why they have those nice green leaves that you're seeing there. They're tropical in nature, so of course the colder weather is not their friend, so they'll want to come indoors. And of course, we love to enjoy the beautiful blooms, and they typically say that to get them to bloom more frequently, a south-facing window is best, but of course they don't want to have that direct sunlight beaming in on them because it's going to hurt these plants. They like the sun facing, but not directly. And we get them as wonderful gifts from time to time. We want them to come back. So, we'll just do the best that we can to get them taken care of. And these are some moth orchids right here, one of the most common varieties, and just absolutely beautiful. So let's get those situated correctly so we can enjoy them for a long time. Next, we're moving on to Bougainvillea, and that would be number 17. Very, very tropical. The white parts you're seeing would be the flowers, and the pink parts would be the bracts. Very, very showy, very, very beautiful. You can grow them in containers, but try to trim them often, in the growing season so they don't grow too large so that they'll actually fit in, when you bring them indoors. And now it's time for the bonus point, guys. And what I'll say is, we do want to bring them in and all of that, but sometimes, life gets in the way, or life is lifing, as we say. And, sometimes you may not have enough time to bring everything inside your house to prepare them the right way. But what you can do is just leave them in the garage, leave the light on in the daytime. And when you have the time, you can go in and bring them in. But just don't keep it there for too long, and make sure the garage has a fair amount of, warmth inside there, and they should be perfectly fine. So I hope that this was helpful to you to bring your plants. And if I left any other that you wanted to add in, be sure to put those in the comments. I appreciate your comments. I want to thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the fall season and stay tuned for the next video. Take care. Happy gardening.